Welcome, humans. I am ready for you.
Welcome to Neuroemergent, the podcast about neurodiversity in the Pacific Northwest and beyond. I'm your host, Carrie Stewart Lingle, and I am actually autistic. In today's episode, we'll be visiting Club Everyone, Me, and You in Portland. My guests, Michelle and John Davis, started the nonprofit in 2019 to create an accepting social environment for adults and young adults with autism and other neurodivergent conditions. But before we dash off to Club EMU, an update on the biggest neurodiversity news story of the year. Or maybe I should call it the biggest fake news story.
Autism destroys families. These are kids who will never pay taxes. They'll never hold a job. They'll never play baseball. They'll never write a poem. They'll never go out on a date. And we have to recognize we are doing this to our children.
Back in April, Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. held a press conference to announce an all-out effort to, quote, find the cause of the autism epidemic, which he promised would be concluded by September. And this month, right on schedule, the Wall Street Journal reported that HHS was preparing to release its finding that autism rates are on the rise due to the use of Tylenol, or acetaminophen, by mothers during pregnancy. Just to be clear, the Health and Human Services Department has not conducted new research to come to this conclusion. On the contrary, RFK Jr.'s quote-unquote findings are based on cherry-picked papers already in the scientific literature, taking weak statistical correlations and dressing them up to look like simple cause and effect. I can point you to numerous reputable sources, from the Autism Science Foundation to the Wall Street Journal itself, to explain in detail why the Tylenol thing is a red herring. But all of those stories, podcasts, and videos are, how do I put this delicately? Boring AF. That's because in order to understand why the Health and Human Services Department is serving up snake oil, you have to dig into the weeds of the scientific research process, which is boring to pretty much everybody outside the actual scientific research community. As everyone knows, RFK Jr. used to support the debunked theory that vaccines cause autism. He no longer makes that claim, but he's never apologized or admitted he was wrong. Instead, he found new pretenses to continue his crusade against vaccines, and now he's found a new scapegoat for autism to replace his debunked vaccine theory. After the Wall Street Journal published its scoop on the Tylenol report, shares of the drug maker's parent company, Kenvue, dropped by 10%. But that is the least of the costs that will ultimately be paid by the American people when their government willfully spreads misinformation about science and health. My guests in the studio today are Michelle and John Davis, the founders of Club Everyone, Me, and You in Portland. As the parents of two autistic boys, they have spent years navigating the medical and education systems in order to give them the best start in life that they could. But as their sons approached their teen years, John and Michelle began thinking more and more about what kinds of supports would be there, or wouldn't be, after their boys grew up and became men. John and Michelle Davis founded their nonprofit, Club Everyone, Me, and You, in 2019. Club EMU's mission is to provide an accepting social environment for adults and young adults with autism and other neurodivergent conditions. They host a monthly game club and various outdoor activities in the Portland area.
Yeah, usually you just go down to clear the devices, and then everybody hit their left and right.
I tagged along with John Davis during Club EMU's most recent game club, held on the second Friday of every month at West Lynn Lutheran Church.
Guys, I have other fighting games other than Smash.
Are we good with the lights off?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What you doing over there, mister?
A full calendar of Club EMU events, including a Halloween dance party co-hosted by the Autism Society of Oregon on October 25th, is available online at clubemu.org/events. Welcome to the show, Michelle and John.
Hello, thanks for having us.
Yes, hello.
I'd like to start by getting to know the two of you a little better. Where did you grow up? How did you meet? And, what kind of life did you plan together before you had your first child?
You
want to go first?
Well, I was born in Michigan, lived there until I was 4. Then my family came over here to Oregon, and I have pretty much been here since.
And I'm from California originally, born and raised in Sacramento, California. Moved up here when I was about 19 with my family, and been probably an Oregonian now longer than a Californian if I was to do the math.
How did you meet?
Oh boy. I was at the time, karaoke was huge, right? And I was probably going out to a karaoke joint probably every week, and so I was at a place called Lee's Kitchen
in Tualatin,
and was singing, and I think you went there with your friends or a friend.
I was looking for a mutual friend that just happened to be with you.
Oh, okay. And I was there singing, hanging out, and you were there not singing.
No, I don't sing.
But
you don't want to hear that.
Enjoying yourself, and what was it, the next day or the day after or something like that?
You're skipping over all the good, juicy details. He was singing The Dance by Garth Brooks in a cowboy hat. Yeah. I tell everybody it was the Long Island iced tea I was drinking, but I got his phone number from our mutual friend and called you the next day.
Yeah, I didn't even know. I was like, hello, who? Because she didn't even talk to me or approach me or anything that night, so I had no clue. And we went out on a date and started.
So what were y'all doing? What for a living or etc.?
I was working as a truck driver in Wilsonville. Mm-hmm. And you were
working at Michael's Arts and Crafts.
Yeah.
So describe your experience then as parents of 2 autistic boys. When and how were they diagnosed? And what kind of challenges did you have? And what have you learned along the way?
Well, definitely looking back now, knowing what we do now, I could see little things at when they were young. But our oldest, Matthew, I didn't even know what the word autism was, really, back then. And he was maybe 4th or 5th grade when we finally got the right diagnosis. There was a lot of misdiagnosis along the way and misdirections, no supports out there. Nobody knew what they were doing, it seemed. When the school suggested it was Asperger's, I wanted to get our own exam from a doctor, and a psychiatrist said that it was just separation anxiety and to drag him to school. And that kind of made sense. He couldn't do preschool. They had sent him home, and he really enjoyed being around me, so it clicked. And again, not knowing a lot of information about autism personally, and so you do seek out the professionals, and they steered us to just making him go to school, not knowing that he was being bullied, even not only by kids, but even by a teacher. We switched to a charter school from a regular public school at that point to see if he would get more one-on-one, and they really weren't equipped for special education.
What's the age difference between your 2 boys?
3 years.
3-ish? Yeah.
And was the second road easier to figure out, or are they very different?
They're different.
I guess in a way easier, because having so many misdirections with the first, we didn't want to slap a label on our younger son if it wasn't going to get, produce anything of benefit, any supports, till we had to. So we had Joshua, our youngest, diagnosed when he was 15, just in preparation for adult services. Because up before that, there wasn't a lot of good resources that we had come across, any help from the school or
or
from the medical field.
Yeah, maybe they just didn't understand either. Because, I mean, I don't want to say it was like the boom of autism, but things were accelerating with the rate of autism. So maybe they were unprepared for what they needed to do to service these kids that are having these issues at school. I do remember one person in the school before we pulled Matt out was apologizing to parents for the bad kids in the class, and they were specifically talking about him. So, I mean, obviously they didn't know what to do with these kids that were getting picked on and reacting to it, and then they'd have a meltdown, and then they would be the one pulled out of class and be called the bad kid. So that's something that stood out to me that kind of, stuck in my craw, was my kid being called a bad kid, which really wasn't a bad kid. Mm-hmm. He had his issues. He had his moments of noise and lights and different things that bugged him, and he learned differently, and they were teaching one way, and things would irritate him, and kids knew it. Kids are not dumb, and they would pick on him, and they get a rise out of him, and he didn't end up being the one getting in trouble. So that's when we decided, let's just homeschool him.
Well, we actually tried a couple years of online school that he kept up with his peers, but it was so rigorous. He was at the computer for all day. So his last couple years of high school is when we started to homeschool, and he thanked me and said for the first time he was learning, because we tailored it to things of interest and material form that would make sense to him. More videos instead of written material. So he had thanked me that he was finally learning something.
Yeah, I remember him saying that. But that's how he learned.
Yeah.
That's how he learned. And I mean, we're no experts. We're just parents trying to figure out what's the best thing to do for our kids.
The thing with most public schools,
it seems like it's set up one way.
Everybody is a round peg. I hate to use that analogy, but Matthew was struggling in elementary school, for example, multiplication. And I asked for some more support. They just threw more worksheets at him. What he needed was a different format to understand what he was doing. But they just throw more worksheets at you, and it's a one-way road on how you learn the material, when they should probably find a way to reach everybody at their level.
But it was kind of like that, how do I say it, where the autism had gone from, I don't know the numbers, 1 in 10,000 to 1 in 1,000 or something like that. And it was like a lot of kids were being diagnosed with it, and I don't think they knew or were prepared. And
True.
And he happened to be just at that start of it. And
well, and of course, one of the difficulties with all of this, particularly with the schools, is, autism is one thing, but a lot of the things that, autistic people have difficulty with, from the bullying to the sensory sensitivities, that's their autism. Mm-hmm. But a lot of them also have other things going on, and those are often the things that they need the supports with as well. So it becomes very difficult and challenging, I think, for everyone all around. And the whole school system is sort of set up on an industrial model of one size fits all. Mm-hmm. And I feel for the teachers who have to try to, they're just doing what their training, their policies tell them to do, right?
Yeah, right.
True. And I'm speaking as a mom and wishing that they had found a different way to support and reach my children to help them learn, but I wasn't in the room with 20 other students that they had to help as well. So that's a lot to navigate.
Well, navigating the education and the medical system sounds like a full-time job to me. How soon did you begin to think about what would happen after your sons were grown?
Mm-hmm.
That's something that has probably always been in the back of my head, pretty all consuming as a mom, just worried about how the world is going to treat your sons and how they're going to find friends, hit all those milestones.
Yeah, it's just a worry.
Yeah.
Are they going to be able to function and do everything they need to do?
So you began worrying about it immediately. When did you begin thinking actively about doing something about it?
It was probably adolescence because, yeah, when they were really little, we didn't really know what was going on for sure. It was probably adolescence when you start approaching those milestones that you're supposed to hit, and that they never made friends throughout their life. So you approach adolescence and now adulthood and not meeting some of those milestones and still not connecting with people, then you start to worry. So I would say adolescence was probably when it was starting, a big warning light in my head of, what's to come. How are they going to get support and have people love them? And
Maybe when they were younger, you didn't see it as much because maybe they were in groups of kids running around and doing stuff. And then I think as they got older, you could start seeing the separation of like, okay, my kid's a little different than these guys, and they're off doing their things, and my kids are over here. Hey, they're cool kids, but they do things differently. And yeah, I think as they started to get a little older, I think we started to see the difference. And I coach baseball. I've coached baseball for a long time, and Josh played baseball, and you could see how he was a little different than the other guys. And yeah, so as they got a little older, you could see some of the differences in how they acted and how they responded to winning or losing or getting a hit or not getting a hit or.
So you founded Club Everyone, Me and You in 2019 to provide an accepting social environment for adults and young adults with autism and other neurodivergent conditions. Tell me about the different activities that you host on a regular basis, like your monthly game night and your holiday events.
Well, we do Taco Tuesdays. Taco Tuesdays are simply we pick a restaurant. You bring your money. You bring whatever you want to spend to buy whatever you want to eat or drink, and we sometimes hijack the whole restaurant and sit together and
that's always
eat.
Fun when we fill it up.
So it's conversation, it's eating and talking about what you've done, and it's a simple one. Bowling, kayaking, hiking. We try to do different things. Those are kind of like our major events, like we do on the weekends. We do picnics. We just did a summer picnic where we had the human-sized board game, where we did the life-size board game.
We have the Taco Tuesday game club. We have over 25 game consoles in various rooms, and a board game room and a potluck.
We try to encourage them to play together. That doesn't always happen, but at least they're in the room together talking about what they're doing. And, oh, my God, did you just see what I did? And
so tell me, how big are these events? What's the size of the community that you're serving?
Game club can be anywhere between 80 and 100 plus.
Yeah.
150.
How do you organize that?
Volunteers.
Well, yeah.
We sweet talk a lot of volunteers.
We took Game Club over from
Portland Asperger Network. They ran it for 20 years, and during the pandemic decided to retire and reached out to us for us to take that one over.
So we ended up taking that over because my son Joshua had been going there for I don't know how many years, few years, and really loved going there. And at the time it was for youth and teens only, and it stopped at 18. But when we took it over, we were young adults and up. And so we modified it to be for pretty much anybody. So now kids through adults can go there. They have different rooms, everyone room, teen room, adult room, where they all can split up and play appropriate level games.
Well, how much work is it to run Club EMU as a nonprofit? And what skills have you had to add to your resumes over the past 6 years?
I am not a public speaker. I am more of an introvert for sure, and having to navigate the world and find supports for the for our kids definitely have pushed me out there to public speak more. I now would, I guess, probably be self-deemed as a Canva queen.
She's Canva guru.
With all the flyers and social media
yeah.
things that I've had to drum up.
I'm telling her she should like get a side gig making flyers for people, because she does really good at making Canva flyers and stuff. I don't know. I think we just work it in between when the kids are awake and we're not doing something, or I usually am an early bird, so I'm up before everybody, and I will do what I need to do, update the website and stuff like that. But I can't give you a specific number of how long it takes to do stuff. You do stuff here and there.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot, but it's very rewarding, and it's a family project. We have our kids interacting and volunteering as much as we can. Joshua, he runs our birthday club. He sends out over 100 birthday cards a year for everybody that has signed up for our birthday club. So that's a personal project of his. One thing another activity that we didn't talk about that I'm really proud of is our clubhouse night. We average 30 to 50 participants once a month, but something that was always our vision from the start is we wanted to be neurodivergent led. At some point, we wanted our participants to mold and guide how our activities went. And our clubhouse night, which is on the third Wednesday each month, has kind of transformed into kind of an a la carte night. We have a participant named Ethan that started a writer's club table. Joshua has a drawing table. Matthew has a strategy board game table. So they're kind of molding and designing how they want our club to look like. And
our talent show, karaoke, all that stuff was from members who just said, I would really love it if we had a talent show. And we're like, okay.
Now, is that your big annual fundraiser?
That's our big one.
And that one's a real special one. Again, a participant, Eliza, had come to us. This is our third year now doing it. But she wanted to put on a talent show with neurodivergent performers to show the world, she said, that they could do great things too. And it's just an awesome evening. They get up with no fear at all. You would never catch me up on that stage at all. And they get up with no care, such bravery, just wanting to share whatever they've got going on with the world. And it's just awesome to see.
We had
we have
another nonprofit that plays like a little middle. What is it?
Music for Harmony.
Yeah.
Music for Harmony. They're a nonprofit that started during COVID, putting on like instrument zoos and lessons online when people couldn't get out, and they've been performing in the middle of our show for the last 2 years.
They're awesome.
They're awesome. Yes.
Well, what other relationships have you built with other organizations or individuals in the autism or disability communities? Is there anyone else out there doing something similar to what you're doing to fill that gap for adults and young adults?
Well, Club EMU actually started with us reaching out to the Autism Society of Oregon in 2018. We had taken the guys to Halloween Town in St. Helens, and they were at a dance, and they were just out there cutting the rug in their costumes. They did not care. They were having an awesome time. So we thought putting on a Halloween dance would be fun. So we reached out to the Autism Society.
Yeah, I don't even know how we even thought about going to them.
But we had reached out to them, and this is our 7th year doing a Halloween dance with the Autism Society.
At least.
I think. Somebody has to do the math for me again on that one. But that's how things kind of started. And then the next year we thought, well, that was fun. Let's do more.
Yeah.
So definitely
and that's the birth of Club EMU.
Definitely, yeah. The Autism Society of Oregon, they have, they do a lot of activities that are all ages, and we want to focus on more on the adolescents and
Yeah,
adults.
because we saw a lot of youth stuff,
Yeah, it
and
just
then we thought, okay,
drops
well, when they
off.
get out of school, it's almost like, okay, goodbye, you're out of school,
It just drops off.
and there's nothing. And
There-
so we were just like, all right, let's focus on adults and see what we can do about making some fun activities for adults. I mean, it started out with what, maybe a couple a month, maybe once a month. And then we
Us?
started, us, and then
Yeah.
we started adding, yeah.
But we're starting to see a few more smaller organizations pop up. There is
Shine.
Shine on Spectrum
Shine on
in
Spectrum.
Vancouver with Tony Mueller, Autism Mustang Alliance in
Mm-hmm.
Malino. So we're seeing a little bit more recognition that there's this issue. Yeah, it's starting there. The buzz is
We can
starting
see,
to happen.
yeah, we can start
that
seeing.
there's an issue here. Yeah.
Yeah, we can start seeing. We're seeing some branching off of, like, some people are like trying to do once a month kind of things with friends, and I don't know if they've become nonprofits or if they're just doing it to get people to, hang out with their kids and give them opportunities to do stuff, and whatever it is. But yeah, we're starting to see similar kind of things, like maybe board games once a month, or they go swimming once a month, or stuff like that.
All right.
So
So is there anything else you would like to talk about that I didn't ask about while you have microphones in front of you?
Oh,
That-
jeez.
If you have any message you want to get out about, any final thoughts about, anything big picture about the autism community or the journey that you've been on?
I think for me, even though Club EMU is working on providing social opportunities and addressing the need, I think that there's a long way to go there. I run into sometimes while applying for grants and scholarships that we don't meet their criteria.
the criteria
And
that
you
they
s-
have.
You see health listed in their criteria, and I don't think that a lot of people view social opportunities as a health issue. But that we hear this from participants and their families quite often, that before Club EMU, they were alone.
Sad.
They were facing
Depressed,
depression,
yeah.
no outlet whatsoever, and
Stuck in the room.
every human needs some connection to community.
Right.
That's just basic needs, and it is definitely
I don't think it's looked as the same, that social aspect of it. But, I mean, I've had so many parents say, just by coming to some of your events, it has changed our lives. I don't know how many times I've heard somebody say that to me. Just by coming here and getting him out of his room and being around people that he can talk to and relate to has changed our lives.
where they're accepted,
They're accepted.
included.
We have one participant who says, I've never had a friend, and now I have 20 or 30 friends, and he sings songs. He goes around singing songs that he's not lonely anymore, and so forth. And so I think it's underestimated, the power of the community being together. It's not perfect, right? I mean, no community is perfect. No social thing is perfect. But I think just getting them out and being around people and saying, hey, look, hey, that person's just like me, or I can talk to that person. They understand me, or they accept me, is
Yeah,
huge.
Everybody wants to be included and welcomed into an environment.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time and for doing this for the community. Club EMU hosts a corn maze and bonfire on October 11th and co-hosts a Halloween dance party with the Autism Society of Oregon on October 25th. More details are available at clubemu.org. You can also find Club EMU events listed on the Autism Society of Oregon's website, which has an extensive calendar listing their own events, including support groups and cosplay clubs, as well as other organizations like Club EMU. Who was the first person diagnosed with autism? I typed that question into a search bar after talking with Leah Blankenship, founder of the Neurodiversity Alliance at the University of Oregon, and last month's guest on Neuroemergent.
The first person that was ever diagnosed with autism passed away only like 2 or 3 years ago. Autism is still a very new condition as far as psychiatry is concerned, and so just from that perspective alone, we should be expecting autism rates to still be increasing.
It was a striking fact, and I wanted to know more, especially because autism wasn't officially recognized as a diagnosis by the American Psychiatric Association until 1980. Nevertheless, all the chatbots agree that the first person diagnosed with autism, way back in 1943, was Donald Triplett.
I've always known Don. I don't remember not knowing Don.
We knew that Don was a little different.
Institutionalized briefly as a child, Triplett was gifted in math and music and worked much of his life as a banker in his hometown of Forest, Mississippi, population 5,000, where he died in June 2023 at the age of 89. Just 6 months earlier, his story was featured in a PBS documentary titled In a Different Key, based on the book by John Donvan and Karen Zucker.
He is the first person to be ever diagnosed with autism.
At the time, autism wasn't even a word.
So, how could Donald Triplett be diagnosed with autism in 1943 when autism wasn't a thing in 1943? The answer is that he helped make autism a thing. You might say he was the first person diagnosed with what would later be recognized as autism, but even that statement requires an asterisk. Triplett was Case 1 in a 1943 medical paper by Leo Kanner titled Autistic Disturbances of Affective Contact. Kanner was a clinical psychiatrist at Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore, and he had treated a total of 11 children who exhibited what we now recognize as the telltale traits of autism, including sensory sensitivities, repetitive movements, delayed language development, and meltdowns or temper tantrums. 3 of the 11 children were girls, a higher percentage than current rates of diagnosis, by the way, so you can't blame Kanner for the persistent myth that only boys can be autistic. But his big breakthrough, scientifically speaking, was identifying autism as something other than childhood schizophrenia. His proposed name for the new diagnosis? Kanner syndrome, of course. Kanner got a lot of things wrong about autism. He helped spread the myth that autism was caused by cold and distant mothers, for example. Even so, it took nearly 4 decades for the psychiatric profession to catch up to Kanner. As I mentioned earlier, when I was just starting down this rabbit hole, autism wasn't officially recognized as a diagnosis until 1980, when it was added to the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. It was called infantile autism, not Kanner syndrome, and by definition, the symptoms of infantile autism had to present before 30 months or 2.5 years of age. Those symptoms included, quote, pervasive lack of responsiveness to other people, gross deficits in language development, and, if speech was present, peculiar speech patterns such as immediate and delayed echolalia, metaphorical language or pronoun reversal, and bizarre responses to various aspects of the environment. Close quote. Older children or adults with similar symptoms were diagnosed with a pervasive developmental disorder, a term that is no longer used. So when we say that Donald Triplett was the first person diagnosed with autism, what that really means is that he was the first person diagnosed with a particular subtype of autism spectrum disorder, widely known as infantile autism or, these days, classic autism. If you put aside all the complex terminology, who was the first actually autistic person to be identified as such? Was it Donald Triplett, or was it someone else? Enter Hans Asperger. Leo Kanner died in 1981, the year after he saw his infantile autism diagnosis make the diagnostic manual. But just 2 months before Kanner's death, British psychiatrist Lorna Wing published her own history-changing paper, in which she proposed a new diagnosis called Asperger syndrome. She wanted to highlight the pioneering work of Hans Asperger, an Austrian researcher with his own binder full of childhood autism cases dating back to 1938, even though he didn't start publishing in German until 1944, a year after Kanner. So, why have I taken us down this rabbit hole about psychiatric research papers? Because the confusions of the past are what led to the delusions of the present. I was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder in 2022, when I was 49. To qualify for a diagnosis, I had to show that the symptoms of autism had been present since childhood. But in 1980, I was an academically precocious third grader. I would not have remotely qualified for a diagnosis of childhood-onset pervasive developmental disorder, much less infantile autism. I may have been, quote-unquote, on the spectrum, but only retroactively. In 1994, the year I graduated from college, Asperger syndrome was added to the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. Okay, technically it was Asperger's disorder, viewed as a, quote, milder form of autism. So that is the first time I could have qualified for an autism-related diagnosis, at least in theory. But I was masking my autism so well, I can't imagine a clinician would have agreed to the diagnosis, even if I could have imagined it for myself. And how could I have? Asperger's syndrome was an idea in 1981, and an official diagnosis in 1994. But the first time I saw a character with Asperger syndrome on TV was in 2004, a full decade later.
I have various emotional deficits, some of which are consistent with Asperger's syndrome.
That was actor Christian Clemenson as Jerry Hans Espenson, a whip-smart lawyer who minced steps ritualistically around the courtroom on ABC's Boston Legal. You know, because comorbid OCD.
All my life, I have been picked on for being weird.
In 2013, the 5th edition of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, or the DSM-5, folded all autism-related diagnoses into one big, happy autism spectrum disorder. But the stereotypes associated with Asperger syndrome persist. Most of us absorb these stereotypes through popular culture, but those fictional depictions all draw on science and scholarship, on research papers. And so the confusions of the past become the delusions of the present. The biggest example when it comes to autism is Rain Man.
How do you know this car?
Definitely know this car. It's 1949 Buick Roadmaster, straight 8, Fireball 8.
Dustin Hoffman won the Academy Award in 1989 for his portrayal of an autistic savant on a road trip with Tom Cruise in Rain Man.
Only 8,095 production models. Dad lets me drive slow on a driveway, but not on Monday. Definitely not on Monday.
Hoffman consulted experts and did all of his method acting homework. But in large part, he based his performance on the real-life savant Kim Peek, who inspired the story, bringing all of his powers of observation and mimicry to bear. But here's the thing. The real Kim Peek, who died in 2009, was diagnosed with autism in his life, but experts now believe he actually had a rare genetic condition called FG syndrome, which is marked by an enlarged head and various neurological problems, including the loss of the corpus callosum, the connecting cable between the left and right hemispheres of the brain. In other words, the real Rain Man was a savant, but he wasn't autistic. And yet he helped establish the stereotype of autism for an entire generation. My generation. So who was the first person diagnosed with autism? I can't answer that. But I did discover that the first psychiatric researcher to propose that autism was a thing and not just childhood schizophrenia wasn't Leo Kanner or Hans Asperger. It was Grunya Sukhareva, a Ukrainian-born psychiatrist working in the early years of the Soviet Union. blame her gender, her Jewish heritage, or pre-World War II politics. But Sukareva went uncredited by Asperger, just as Asperger went uncredited by Kanner. No, who gets credit is not the most important issue in the world. But it is important. We live in a world built of words, and those who control the power of naming shape our reality. And just as the confusions of the past become the delusions of the present, the confusions of the present become the delusions of the future. Something to think about when the presidentially appointed, Senate-approved Secretary of Health and Human Services announces that the cause of the quote-unquote autism epidemic is Tylenol. You've been listening to Neuroemergent, the podcast about neurodiversity in the Pacific Northwest and beyond. This podcast is presented by Lonesome George Productions in association with KBOO Community Radio in Portland and KMUZ Community Radio in the Mid-Willamette Valley. Our theme music was composed by Doug Lingle, and our production assistant is P.F. Lingle. I'm your host, Carrie Stewart Lingle.